Hello, lovely sewing friends. I hope you guys are doing well. First of all, this, I think, this is my first video recording in 2025. So I've managed to upload nearly weekly for a year, which I think is very good considering I'm fairly new to YouTube and it's been lots of fun so far. So if you've been with me since day one, when I posted my first ever video called Start Ugly, because like with anything, you've just got to start and it's got to be ugly. As a creative, I found that the worst part is just starting and it not looking how you want it to look. But in time, things develop and they get better. And therefore, we're now a year on and nearly 50 or so YouTube videos up. So I guess I can confirm and say that I have started ugly, because I look back at some of those, original first few uploads and they were not how I would do it now, essentially. But I hope you guys had a lovely Christmas and New Year's. Oh my God, okay, I'll quickly tell you guys what I did. I had such a nice Christmas and New Year's because I just spent it by myself for myself. I got lots of little jobs done around the house that I've been meaning to get done, like cleaning my oven, right? I've never cleaned my oven in this apartment and I was shocked. We'll just leave it at that. But one of the last things that I did over the New Year's break between Christmas and New Year's was I finished writing my intermediate sewing guide. And I'm gonna take you guys all through it because, okay. So the reason I am so excited about this one is because everything that I've done previously in sewing ebooks or guides or sewing courses has all been beginner. Whereas now I'm taking you guys onto more advanced sewing projects. So the beginner ebook I think was 32 pages. This is 72, right? This is 72 pages of sewing intermediate, step by steps. So I'm going to take you guys through it because it's so cool. The thing I love about this one is that I actually explain the why we're using this. For example, so in this, okay. So in this one, there's 3 sewing patterns. There's this top, which is a nice basic top. There is a set of shorts that I've got on, so these ones, and then a sewing machine cover. But I'll take you guys through this as we go through it. So first of all, that's me wearing the top. And you may have also noticed that this has a little cowboy hat embroidery on there. That's a little extra little bonus you can do with your top. So basically it goes through welcome, and then it sets out what's in the sewing guide. So we've got a table of contents, and I think, how many sections are there in this? There are 7 sections in this that take you through everything you need to know. So for example, chapter 1, we go through expanding your sewing toolkit, because as a beginner, you kind of just get what you need when learning to sew. And then once you've kind of got the grips on that, you want to start expanding your sewing toolkit to include other things. So for example, in this one, we go over a rotary cutter and a self-healing mat, because I also take you through bias binding in this sewing ebook. And that really helps you when you're doing different sewing projects. One of them that uses this bias binding is the sewing machine cover. So you don't only do the sewing project, but you do the elements for the sewing project. For example, you make your own bias binding for the sewing machine cover. Then with this top, you learn all about the different types of fabrics, which is in another section. And then with the shorts, you learn about curved seams and everything. So everything that goes into making the sewing projects, you learn through this book. So that's one element. You've got some more there. Then also I talk about these bias binding making feet. They are super helpful. I wish I had an example right on hand here with me. Aha, I do. I actually do. So these are them. So basically what you do is you thread through some fabric there. Do I have any on hand? Nah, I don't. Not pressed, at least. This, godsend when it comes to doing bias binding, because what you do is you thread through your fabric in there and then you pull it out here and basically it folds it all up. And I talk about these in this book. And then we go over like a tracing wheel as well. This is such a detailed guide. I'm not kidding you. We go over different sewing machine feet. Sewing machine feet for different fabrics as well. So you've got your regular, like standard foot. Then you've got a rolled hem foot for lightweight, delicate fabrics. Then you've got a zipper foot, you've got a walking foot, and you've got a buttonhole foot. All of them, you will need to know how to use them and what fabrics to use them on. Do I need interfacing or not? All of that. And I'll tell you what, that's all covered in the fabrics guide. And in this one, we go over the different types of fabrics, not only the different types of fabrics, but the finishes on those types of fabrics. So for example, a fabric with a nap or a fur or a wool or anything with a texture. I then also give you guys this table here that goes over the fabric type, what it's best used for, and the skill associated with that. For example, let's look at denim, right? Denim here. It's best used for jeans, jackets, skirts, and bags, heavy duty garments here. And it's an intermediate fabric because of the thickness of it and the durability of it. Compared to, for example, a chiffon, which is best used for scarves, evening dresses, blouses, and bridal wear, and that's an advanced. And that is because of the weight of the type of fabric, how it's handled, the different techniques you use for that fabric. So I cover all of that. Then in chapter 2, I go over intermediate sewing techniques, right? So when you start to experiment with different sewing techniques, you'll notice that different fabrics respond differently. For example, with a knit like this top, you will need something called an overlocker. Now, an overlocker is a separate piece of sewing machinery that you will need as you advance up your sewing journey. However, I've had an overlocker for a long time. I love it. You don't need it, but it's one of those things that as soon as you've got it, you use it all the time. So I take you over everything you need to know about introducing you to an overlocker, and that is backed up with the different types of threads you'll need, because these are your sewing machine threads. These ones are your overlocking cones, right? And I'll just show you quickly here. Let me just get them. Okay. Overlocking cone. Sewing thread, right? 100 meters, around $5. 10,000 meters, $7, $8. Why would I buy this when I can buy this and it's cheaper? I'll tell you why. So an overlocker has 3 or 4 spools of thread that go through it. Now, because there's multiple threads being used, right, they don't have to be as strong. So these are normally a cotton and really easy to break, right? Compared to a sewing machine thread that you only have one of, that's a polyester and is much harder to break, right? So you want to use the more durable thread that is stronger for your sewing machine and your seams. This is only used for finishing the seams. It's more so a, what do you call it? Like a way to just tidy things up. This is your building block. This is your foundational building block. Do not put this type of thread on your sewing machine or this type of thread on your overlocker. You can if it's very specific coloring, but I tend to not use my expensive Gutermann thread on my overlocker unless it's a very specific color, because I can just use an overlocking cone thread because I don't need the strength of this ×4 in my overlocker. And also this could create a bit more bulk or rigidity in my seams, whereas this cotton is a lot more flexible. Spools versus cones, right? And then I talk all about choosing an overlocker to suit your needs. For example, if you are sewing with a lot of knit, sleepwear, underwear, swimwear, activewear, lots of wears, an overlocker is probably going to be the best bet for you. Whereas if you're just doing like, you know, sewing tote bags or like little bits and bobs, maybe not so much. Then here, I talk about choosing the right needle for your overlocker. And now, because an overlocker is a completely different machine from your regular sewing machine, you are going to have to use specific types of needles as you use specific types of threads, right? Then we go over adjusting the tension on your overlocker, because that can trip up a few different beginners. And then here we have a little quiz of like, do I need an overlocker or do I want an overlocker? Because we are conscious consumers here. So it goes over like, you know, what do you mostly sew? Do you prefer to sew with like heavy duty fabrics or more lightweight fabrics or medium weight fabrics? So it helps inform you there. Then we go over overlocking tips and tricks here. So it goes over the thread chain that you leave when you finish a seam after overlocking, testing your tension on a scrap piece of fabric, and how to clean and maintain your overlocker. I need to heed my own advice on that, because I do not clean my overlocker nearly as much as I clean my sewing machine. And because your overlocker actually removes ever so slightly a little bit of the edge of your fabric, it's going to release a lot more dust and fluff from the fabric. So cleaning it and maintaining it and oiling it is the best way to keep it in tip-top condition. Read that paragraph. I'm talking to myself more than anything. Now in here, we are going to go over introduction to fabrics. And now this, I wish I knew when I started sewing 20 years ago, because there have been so many sewing projects that I have done that I've just not used the right fabric. For example, about, how long was it? Yeah, around 10 years ago, I was making a t-shirt in my sewing class in high school, and I used a cotton canvas for a t-shirt. And of course, that did not work out so well because it was stiff, it was so structured, and you couldn't put it over your head. And that is because a sewing pattern that is a t-shirt design is designed with a fabric recommendation of a cotton knit fabric, right? And so what that means is that you're choosing the right fabric for the right sewing project, so you can avoid what I did. So we go over picking the right fabric and considering the weight and the drape of the fabric, and to see how it kind of acts in the way that you want it to be worn. For example, like you would never use a denim or a heavyweight canvas to make a pair of sweatpants, because it's not comfortable, you know? So we talk about all of that. Then we talk about your skill level, and then that links back to that chart that we had before of like, you know, what is the best fabric, what is it best used for, and then the skill level. So we kind of match the fabric and the skill level. For example, if you're a beginner, do not go near sheer fabrics, do not go near sateen fabrics, because they are just going to mess you around. Stick with really beautiful cottons and linens, because they are going to give you the best results for your skill level. Whereas as you advance, you can go into knits and denims and, you know, try out things with a nap or a print. So that we talk about that. Then in the care and maintenance, right? So when you start sewing with fabrics in different ways, you'll notice that they all behave and act in different ways. For example, if you cut something on the bias and it's a woven fabric, it will grow, right? So when you finish cutting out your fabric, I tend to always leave everything as flat as I can, because then it doesn't warp out of shape. Now, I do that with most of my fabrics, if not all, but then there's some that of course I would never need to do that with. So like a PVC or something that is like a leather. So working with different types of fabrics, you've got to treat them differently. Again, for example, when you're sewing with a knit fabric, you need to use a stretch stitch, a stretch thread, or an overlocker. See, all of these different elements all come into play when you're sewing a particular sewing project. And that then leads us on to, I told you this was long, so you've only got yourself to blame if you made it this far. Then we go over patterns and textures. Now, this is really useful for when you're wanting to work with something that has a print or a one-directional nap or a fur, or, you know, faux fur, obviously. Something that, or sequins, anything that has to be directional, this part really comes in handy because we talk about how to match a print, right? I made that, like summer skirt, and I made sure that all of my pattern pieces were correct and all lined up at the seams, and this is how I did it. So I talk you through all of that. And then I talk about fabric drape and print interaction. So what that means is that, like, for example, you've got a sequin, you know those pillows that you do it one way and it's one color and you do it the other way, it's another color? It talks about that. So what you don't want is like the left sleeve done one way and then the right sleeve done the other way, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So in there, I talk about that. And then I talk about pre-washing, which is also very important and comes up in a chart later on in this book. Then we talk about fabric nap, right? Corduroy. You'll know about corduroy. So corduroy is the typical one that will have a nap. And as you go through, you'll slowly start to build up all the different kind of elements of fabrics. And fabrics with a nap are often used for like outerwear garments, like shorts or pants or jackets. So much more heavier, dutier types of things, right? We go over cutting fabric with a nap. I'm going to speed through a couple of these. And then we go over pressing and sewing, and then pattern matching and seams as well. What else here? Pre-washing and fabric care as well. Then this is, see, you would have thought that that covered everything you need to know about fabrics. No. Then we go into lightweight fabrics, and we talk about the thread and the needle selection, sewing machine setup. For example, if you're using a lighter weight fabric, you don't want a really tight tension on your sewing machine and you don't want a thick needle. You want a really sharp silk needle, and you want a really fine silk thread, and you want a really nice even tension on the lower end of things, because all of these things add up and they result in a perfect sewn garment. And then we talk about seam finishing, French seams for really lightweight, delicate fabric, or a rolled hem like we've discussed in our, in the sewing machine feet. Then pressing techniques, lower heat setting if it's a really delicate, lightweight fabric, and then handling and cutting. So with that, you might want to use a starch spray or something to help weigh down the fabric. You might also want to use a safe self-healing mat and a rotary cutter so that it doesn't shift when you're cutting. All of these things are in here, right? And then I do the exact same with the mid-weight and heavyweight fabrics. So all in there, we talk about the different types of fabrics, and I talk about how I finish things. Mid-weight fabrics, I overlock and then I use a hand stitch. And then I talk about stretch fabrics, because stretch fabrics come into play when we talk about the sewing projects we do. So we talk about stretch fabrics, and all in there, I refer back to the overlocker and the different types of threads and needles and how I tend to cut my garments out. And then we move on to, this is chapter 3 of 7, okay? Then we talk about how to press and press corners and curves and do all the clipping, for example. And that comes into place when we're doing the pockets on our shorts, we talk about layering a seam, pressing a seam, sewing a corner, that comes into play with the sewing machine cover, and edge stitching comes into play with the shorts. Then we talk about hemming fabrics. We talk about different types of weights that you've got to take into consideration when hemming. For example, if you're hemming a really lightweight fabric, you're going to want to do something called a couture hem or a rolled hem. And then if you're doing a mid-weight fabric, you're wanting to do like a 1-2 fold. Or if you're doing a heavyweight fabric, you want to do something called a mitered corner. All of that is covered in there. Talk about sewing with stretch fabrics, and I refer back to the overlocker is one, and then a walking foot is another way. Then we move on to bias binding, which is another way you can finish your fabric. So I talk about bias binding, where to use it, how to attach it. I talk about different ways that you can use bias binding. So I also use my bias binding as a facing in a lot of my garments, for example. Yeah, I've got one here. So here, I've actually just used it to just cover the edges, right? So that's just a nice, easy way I've used bias binding. It doesn't take much to make your own, and it is a gorgeous result. And then you can use one of these, expand your sewing kit, and make yourself some bias binding. There is a bias binding pattern included in this ebook, and basically everything I know about bias binding, and that is like several pages. So we talk about buying bias binding versus making your bias binding. I also talk about how bias cut garments fall and drape, then leads us back to the fabric selection. And then we talk about the different ways you can make your own bias binding. So here I've used that foot, and then here I've used 2 pins, and then I move my bias binding along and it kind of folds itself under. I do have a reel on that on my Instagram. It's like one of my, you'll find it, don't worry. Then we go back to the top stitching and more in-depth ways of sewing. So we've got the top stitching, which is used for more durable fabrics, and then we talk about the understitching, or again edge stitching, but this is referring purely to the sewing projects that we're going to be discussing in the next part. And then also decorative stitches that can also be used to elevate your sewing in any kind of way. So here are our sewing projects. So here you can see we've got the basic t-shirt. Then we've got this gorgeous pair of elasticated shorts that can also be made into pants with pockets or no pockets. And then we have a sewing machine cover. So I'm going to take you guys over what these kind of projects entail. So first of all, we have my beautiful cowboy top. So this is one of my favorite tops, and I've worn it so much this summer, and I've actually made quite a few. There's another yellow one that I've made that I've been wearing quite a lot as well, but I just need to redo the top, the collar on it, just because it just wasn't working out how I intended it to, so I need to attach it with a ribbing. So this top comes in a range of sizes. So it's from like, size 4 to 28. So you've got a really big size range in it. I'm a size 16, but I tend to make my tops a little on the smaller size just because I like them quite fitted. And can I tell you one of the best things about this top? I will tell you the best thing about this top is the armhole, right? So listen to me, because this is a summer top, can easily be made in merino and long sleeve for winter, but the best thing about this top is the lowered armholes, because I've lowered this armhole by 2 centimeters, and you know why? Sweat patches. That is why I've lowered this armhole, because of sweat patches, and I do not like being pinched under my armpits. So that is the best thing about this top. And I've cropped it a bit so that when I tuck it into my shorts, as you will soon see, it doesn't all bunch up like around my stomach. Top. So, right, the next thing we are going to make is the pair of shorts I'm about to show you. So, okay, I'll just put you there. A gorgeous pair of shorts. I love these shorts. Pockets. These pockets are huge. I can put, okay, watch this, hand, right? Fully outstretched. Got my full hand in there. These pockets are so big, you can literally fit everything in them. The reason I have to have pockets in my shorts, especially, is because I like to go for walks in the morning and I don't want to take things in my hand, so I have to have pockets to put lots of stuff in. So these fit my phone, my headphones, and my keys all in one pocket. Obviously, I like distribute it so I don't jangle, but these shorts, right, they're also just so freeing. And elasticated waistband, so you can have a really big lunch. Need I say more? So I've done these in a size, I did them in a size 16 again. I could have gone down a size, but what I did is I quite like them to be somewhat baggy, and then I like to have a tight top on, so it's nice and contrasting. But also what I did with these is I took them up quite a bit, and in the sewing pattern you can merge between sizes. You can also lengthen and shorten them at your own free will. So I just did the shorts, and then I took around 10 centimeters off the bottom, and then I just finished them as described in the sewing pattern. But you can finish them in a bunch of different ways, as you will have learned in the sewing ebook. So that's that. But I'm going to swivel you guys around and I will show you the sewing machine case, right? This is my sewing machine case. Isn't she beautiful? So, first off, you're like, cool, sewing machine case, like, cool. No, it's got pockets. It's got these little pockets here so that you can put, well, maybe not my diary's quite big. Let's just get some pens. You know, got those, and then wait. Got my sewing scissors. Let's put safety first and put them in like that. Not only do my shorts have pockets, my sewing machine cover has pockets. And I'll tell you what, that's not even the best part. That's not even the best part. It's genuinely not even the best part. Because you want to know what the best part is? Okay, first of all, this is a cotton canvas that you kind of is a more intermediate and durable weight fabric. But also, you learn how to do a welt pocket on top. I know I've got you on the edge of your seat, but it's reversible. You thought the pockets were the best part, but no. It is 100% reversible. And that little pocket up there, look at that. And you got your own bias binding down there that you've made. I'm pretty chuffed with that. Pretty chuffed. So, really beautiful patterns and sewing techniques and full-on descriptions in this book. So, we go over those, right? We've got that. Organizing your sewing space. How to store your fabrics and your threads and your sewing patterns as well. An ironing guide. What heat setting? Okay, what fabric type, what iron setting, and additional tips and tricks. For example, if you've got a really lightweight synthetic fabric, use a pressing cloth. Use a pressing cloth, you will melt through your fabric. How to do fusing and what weight to have, right? Fabric, oh, this is the fabric master guide, right? So if you didn't think I went into enough detail before, I expand upon it in optimizing your machine settings, talking about choosing the right needle and thread, right? Because you've got to get both of them right for your sewing machine to properly work with the fabric. Caring for your fabrics. And I love this next part. The ultimate fabric master guide. Oh, Annie, can you please tell me how I need to work with the wool? Oh my God, thank you so much for asking. Of course I'll tell you. So first of all, you'll need a universal needle type. You'll need a wool or polyester thread. You'll need a medium heat iron setting. Your machine stitch length needs to be at 2.5 to 3 millimeters. Your machine stitch tension needs to be between a 3 and a 4. You need to hand wash or dry clean, and it is an intermediate skill level. I'm proud of me for putting this together. So we go over cotton, linen, silk, chiffon, denim, wool, jersey, and knits, tulle, canvas, velvet, rayon, and viscose. Did you even notice that they were in alphabetical order? Because I did. Just saying. Then we go over fabric care and maintenance again. So what else do you need from me except my final thoughts on this ebook? Then I go over frequently asked Q&As, so it's an easy reference guide. So what are you doing this weekend? Because I know what I'm doing. Sewing. I'm sewing. Should I tell you what I love most about that ebook? Is that for the first time, this is my first ever intermediate product in general, apart from like 1 or 2 sewing patterns. But that is such a comprehensive guide. Like, it is so jam-packed of things that you can also just keep in your sewing studio. For example, like, where is it? This fabric master guide is designed to be printed out and stuck on your wall, right? Could go there. You never know. So it's everything in here is just like a quick reference guide, like this. This was, which one was this? Ironing. Just stick that up near your iron. I love it. I love that I've managed to put it all into one space for people. I love that I show you in real time, like, the difference between these 2 threads, because these are all things that nobody told me I had to figure out. So if you're wanting to upgrade your skills, even just a bit, or just push yourself, because I really think that the best way for a beginner to advance to an intermediate is just try new things. And some people are quite scared to try new things, which is totally understandable, especially if it's a hobby. Like, you want to stick to what's safe, but also you want to explore different things. And by using this guide and these templates and these sewing patterns, you're able to build up your skills in a guided way, right? So for example, if you're like, gosh, I've actually never worked with a knit fabric before, what do I need to know about it? So that, like, let's imagine you get home and you're like, I didn't know I needed a walking foot. I didn't know I needed an overlocker. I didn't know I needed a stretch needle. I didn't know I needed a stretch thread. I didn't know I need to use a stretch stitch. All of that is in here. It's going to save you so much time. And I want this to make your sewing experience so much more enjoyable, because it is your hobby. And if you love sewing and you love spending time sewing and your energy, that is precious time for you. And I don't want you to be wasting it unnecessarily. And that is why this guide is so useful, because it doesn't just make sewing easier, it makes it achievable, right? It makes it so achievable that you can actually enjoy the process of it. So I hope you guys like it, because I loved it. And I'll definitely be doing a more advanced one, so I can kind of take you guys through the whole steps. But I've loved putting this together. And I'm sure you can see like how much work has gone into it, because I want it to be something that sewists like yourself rely on, right? I've been sewing for 20 years now. And I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've learned a lot of lessons, and I've kind of gone like, okay, I'll apply that lesson to other things, right? So for example, whenever I'm pressing a seam, I know that the fold back, the seam allowance, is obviously double the width of this fabric underneath, right? So when I'm pressing and it's a lightweight fabric, I need to use a pressing cloth because the heat from the iron is going to, distribute to the single leg. All of these things that you just don't think about when you're first starting that can trip you up. So, I'm so happy with it. And I hope you guys are too. Speaking of things that we're happy with, I fixed that bra this morning that I said I was gonna fix last year, and I finally fixed it. So I'm wearing that bra today as well. That's another me made, I guess. So have fun. Bye.